Hey guys, welcome to my review of XXx, The Return of Xander Cage. XXx Return of Xander Cage was just released January 20th, 2017. The film was directed by DJ Caruso, and it stars Vin Diesel, Toni Collette, and Donnie Yen. So the plot of this film for me is kind of hard to talk about because it takes so many different directions and never really stays in one straightforward point. Basically the title is the plot, is The Return of Xander Cage. But to try and simplify it, a group of extreme sports enthusiasts. I don't even know what they are. They never really established themselves until later in the film, but I don't want to spoil it. I don't know how to say this. I do not know how to plot this movie out. A device known as Pandora's Box that can control every satellite that is circling the globe. And this group of athletic extremists have stolen this device. So in order to track this group down and get this device back, the NSA recruits Xander Cage out of his retirement because, according to the second one, he dies, but he comes back. They don't really explain that. Nothing is explained in this movie. This movie is impossible to plot. It does not know how to plot. It's the return of Xander Cage. This is like take, 16? In order to get the device back, the NSA hires Xander Cage and pulls him out of his self-imposed retirement to track these people down and bring the device back to American soil. Xander then recruits other members out of the XXx program, and the movie kind of goes from there. Okay, where do I start with this movie? I mean, the first film tried to take itself seriously, but still kind of had that, like, poking fun at the whole genre in of itself. This film doesn't take itself seriously, thankfully, and more pokes fun at itself. Nothing in this movie was supposed to be taken seriously. If anybody tried to take this movie seriously, they would be looking at it from the completely wrong direction. This movie is the purest definition of action schlock. It is just one action scene to the next with a very thinly dissolvable, falls in on itself plot. I mean, it took me forever to try and figure out how to explain the plot to you guys. The plot itself tries to take so many different twists and turns, I lost track of who was doing what and why. The villain's motivations are never explained. The science behind the technology of this Pandora's Box is never really fully explained. Physics goes out the window in this movie completely. That's the one thing I gotta give the first film credit for, is it was over-the-top stunts, but they were believable stunts because most of it was just driving off of a ramp or doing a flip or doing snowboarding or something. Most of it was all believable. Like, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have fun with this movie. It was fun and entertaining and silly and goofy and exactly what I expected, but it does give you a headache when you start thinking about it and start trying to deconstruct it. Speaking of headaches, the dialogue in this film is atrocious. It's as bad as the first film's dialogue was, but there's a lot more of it. This film is mostly comprised of one-liners and cheap jokes and very, very thinly used plot devices. The other downside to this film compared to the first film, and I'm trying not to compare it to the first film, but it's really hard to, especially after just watching the first film. But the one sad thing from this film compared to the first film is, in the first film, the stunts were real. There were a few CGI shots, but they were very few and far between. This film, because it's trying to be bigger and louder and more over the top, there's more CGI used, and it's about as convincing as the 2002 CGI is now. In fact, I might actually say that the 2002 CGI is maybe a little bit better. That being said, there are still some practical stunts, because when they're doing the practical stunts, it's obvious when it's practical and when it's CGI. There's this great skateboarding moment at the beginning of the film, but when they try to go more over the top and more crazy, it looks bad and it looks really unconvincing. I'll give this film this credit over the first film, though. When I saw the first film all those years ago, I wanted loud, shoot 'em up, lots of gunfire, lots of car chases, lots of action, and I was kind of disappointed when I first saw the original film. If this film had come out when I was younger, I would have loved this one a lot more than the first film. There are a lot of action scenes, there's a lot of gunfire scenes, and again, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have any fun with them. At least, I had fun with the scenes that I could see. There are quite a few hand-to-hand moments where the camera's just kind of shaking all over the place, and I got lost trying to focus on it. Now, I don't know if that hard-to-focus element was the cinematography itself or the 3D. I think it's a little bit of both. But the 3D in this film was completely unnecessary. Like, there was very little in it that was even, like, popping off of the screen. They had so much potential with their whole over-the-top motif that they could have just been throwing stuff at the screen, and they didn't take advantage of that, so the 3D element is completely pointless in this film. The thing about the plot is it's trying to be simple. You can tell that they're trying to be simple. But I think the problem is they made it too simple. And they got to a point where they realized that they needed to do something to continue the story, otherwise the movie would only have been 45 minutes. So they add another element as a twist, but then that only takes them an extra 15 minutes, so then they still have to figure out what they're going to do for the climax and finish off the movie and add like an extra half an hour, so then they have to throw in yet another twist. And it becomes super confusing because nobody's motives are explained. The only motive that I can come up with is we need to stretch the runtime. The other confusing thing about this movie is that it's got so many characters, it's hard to keep track of them all. They're trying to make this like the new Expendables, but the problem with this is that they're introducing characters that have never been in this franchise before, and we're just suddenly supposed to know who they are. I mean, to try and thrust these characters into this world, they've given them title cards. Their face like freezes and their name, the name of the character flashes on, and it shows their likes and dislikes. It's like a baseball card. Just so that way we know who these characters are, but it doesn't really help. Honestly, half of the names in this film are there just for name drop. And some of them aren't even like anybody like that significant. My biggest character confusion in this film is, when did Xander Cage become a cartoon? Like in the first film, he's kind of that fish out of water. He's not quite in his element, but so he just kind of goes with it. But you know, when it comes to the stunts, he knows what he's doing. In this, he just feels like he knows everything, and he's super powerful, and he's strong, and he's cocky, and he's arrogant, and it just did not seem like it fit with the character that we last left in the first film. And I think part of the problem is that there is this huge gap, not even between this film and the second film, or even this film and the first film, but there's a gap between the first film and the second film that we've never seen. And Xander's treated as this legend, as this god almost, but we never really see how he got to that status. We've just plunked Xander Cage right here, picking him up where not where they've left him off in the series, but where think they've left him off in the series. So yeah, I feel like I've been adding a lot of hate on this movie, and I did not hate this movie. It's exactly what I expected. I didn't expect anything more. I didn't expect anything less. It was not a disappointment in that fact. And let's face it, I own the first one. I own the second one. Will I own this one? Probably when it's in the bargain bin. It's not a truly terrible film. It's one of those films, just like the first film, that if you get a group of friends together and you have the plans on razzing it, go ahead and watch it and razz it and have some fun with that. But if you're looking for a serious action film or something to take seriously, then you are going to be severely disappointed with this film. So that's my take on XXX Return of Xander Cage. Have you guys seen it? If you have, let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't, let me know if you are planning on seeing it. And don't forget to subscribe if you yourself are jonesing for film.